Hello and welcome everyone to TalkNetwork.com. This is Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, your host today. With a very special guest, we've got Jesse Ventura joining us. Of course, he is the author of American Conspiracies, one of my favorite books, originally released in 2010. It's now in its second edition. And of course, Governor Ventura, the former governor of Minnesota, among his many accomplishments. And he's got a lot to say about real American history and perhaps what might be happening in the near future. Jesse, thank you for joining us today.
Great to be here, Mike. Nice to be with you.
Well, it's great to have you on. You said that you have added 4 additional true conspiracies to this book now, American Conspiracies. You want to give us a hint of what's new in the new book?
Well, I guess I can claim 4, but one is just an update on a previous one. We, of course, do another chapter on that thing in American history that you're not allowed to talk about, you're not allowed to question in any way, shape, or form, because somehow you'd get branded unpatriotic if you do. Well, call me unpatriotic then if you will, but I'm still going to indulge myself when I have questions, and of course I'm speaking of the infamous day of 9/11.
Yes.
And we cover in this book the 9/11 Commission report, and what we're really after is, and people need to know, is that there's 28 redacted pages to that report that George Bush and Barack Obama have decided that you, the American people, don't need to see these pages.
That's right.
Now, I'm offended over the fact that we paid for the investigation. It's therefore our investigation. It's been over a decade. Why can't we at this time read what's in those pages? And so that's the conspiracy theory on 9/11, what is in those pages. And I, of course, have talked to Congressman Cook from Carolina and former Senator Bob Graham of Florida. And there's a current bill in the House, I believe it's House Bill 428, to expose those pages and let the American public know what's in them. And both the congressman and the senator independently have assured me there's nothing in there that deals with the cloak of national security like they're being covered up with.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is just another example of this government rule by secrecy. We've seen the IRS use as a weapon. And what it deals with, what I got out of it, is it's a direct monetary link from the hijackers to the Saudis. If that's true, then that changes 9/11 completely, doesn't it? Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. And isn't it interesting, too, that since your book originally came out, there has been a mass awakening on many of the topics that you write about. And even to some extent, even in the mainstream media now, they're starting to talk about, more of the surveillance and the privacy invasions and the Big Brother aspects of what's going on, even though they won't touch other topics. But don't you see a big awakening continuing to accelerate?
Well, I still think it's accelerating too slow. Mm-hmm. I think these are things that need to be dealt with head on and immediately. They're not like getting an infection. Well, they are. They're like getting an infection and allowing it to fester. You need to deal with the infection straight up and right away and quickly. That doesn't allow that type of thing. And so the light is being shown a little bit, but it isn't being shown the way I would prefer to have it shown, and that's to break these things wide open and let's learn the truth. We're big enough. We can take it. For some reason, government takes this childlike attitude with us that we're children and can't know about certain things, and that, Santa Claus, we don't dare let him know that it's just a story. It's not real.
Right, that's true. They do treat us like little obedient children.
Exactly, and that's done on their part just to cover up what they do. It's a good excuse. Yes. Oh, the American people couldn't handle it. Well, we can handle a lot more than what they think we can.
I agree.
After all, we do handle them, don't we?
Yeah, we handle all their lies and propaganda. So
exactly.
Why not? Yeah, so true. Well, and I know you get asked about this all the time, the Donald Trump question, and the reason I bring it up is because one of the aspects of Trump's candidacy is he promises to reopen a lot of criminal investigations if he were to win the presidency. Criminal corruption.
That's news to me. He's made that promise.
Well, yeah. He's promised to open investigations that the Department of Justice has been covering up. for example, more into Benghazi and the Clinton cover-ups, and perhaps more into Fast and Furious. I'm curious what your thoughts are about that, or Trump in general.
I don't know. Benghazi's been the longest they've ever investigated anything, according to the annals of modern-day history. And they've come up with just about everything there is to come up with on it, and I'm still trying to figure out what went wrong. I mean, what is somebody being charged with here?
Right.
With Benghazi. I mean, 4 people tragically died, but then again, how many people died because of the trumped-up war in Iraq?
That's very true.
And why aren't we investigating that? That caused complete unrest and destabilized the whole region. And it was based on lies and deception, and quite possibly a false flag operation.
Exactly.
And yet nothing is, Benghazi, to me, Benghazi is a red herring compared to the bigger things out there.
Well,
yes,
that's a good
it's
point.
Tragic what happened, but, and Hillary's emails, come on, let's get to some meat and potatoes. They've already admitted that these things were done for political purposes. That one guy that was going to be Speaker of the House screwed up and admitted that the whole Benghazi thing was done to simply wreck Hillary's chance to be president. Now, I don't support her for president, but it shows that it was just it is an operative being done to destroy a potential candidate. They don't have the best interest of the embassy, the people killed, or anybody else in mind, except for their political ambitions.
Good point. They publicly parade one small event that they can hammer away at while covering up the elephant in the room.
Exactly. It's a red herring. It's to get everybody focused on Hillary's emails.
Yeah.
I could care less about them.
Hey, share with our listeners what you're doing besides the book right now. Tell them about your show and what you're doing and what you're up to.
Well, I do the show Off the Grid, and it's a unique way it happened. I was doing a book tour, and I ran into Larry King, and I thought Larry had retired from television, which he had. And I said, Larry, what do you do? Well, why are you here? He said, I'm on the internet now. And I'll never forget, he pointed a finger right at me, and he said, this is where you need to be. and it was Aura TV that Larry was with, and I started communicating with them, and I told them how I'd love to do an internet show. They said they'd love to have me, but then the fly in the ointment was I told them I've made a life change, and I won't change it now. So I don't think I can do a show. I said, I live off the grid down in Mexico, 900 miles away from this country for roughly half the year. I said, so how could I possibly do a show? And they then informed me that they have state-of-the-art equipment, and that as long as they have a power source and access to the satellite, we could literally do the show from anywhere on the planet. And with that in mind, then the show evolved into what we now call Off the Grid. And it's basically, it's the reversal of Radio Free Europe, except on the internet. I live off the grid, and I view the United States from the outside looking in, as opposed to the inside looking out, where all of you are at. And I broadcast back into the U.S. via the internet. I have no handcuffs on me. Great God Almighty, free at last. I think, didn't Dr. King say that? Something like that. Somebody did. But that's how I felt. And that I now can do a show 10 to 11 minutes long where I can turn it loose with no FCC hovering over my head. I have total control of the content. I say what I want to say and have that freedom, and it's been the most fun show, or fun thing, I think, pure fun, that I've ever had a career at.
That's wonderful to hear, and I share that feeling of freedom with you. Like right here, right now, TalkNetwork.com. We launched it for the same reason. No FCC. We don't want to go on, Fox News or CNN and just be badgered by the interview people there. We want to be able to tell the truth and say it wholeheartedly without interference.
And the thing I found is that, Mike, to everything that happens, there's multiple stories. There's There's not one story that covers an event. And the problem is our mainstream media locks in on, quote, the official story, and I always have fun with that name because I said, generally when they label something the official story, it's to protect officials.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's why it has the name, official story. This is their story.
That's right.
But yet, you know that anything that happens, there's going to be, like you brought up Benghazi. Okay, how many stories could you possibly imagine out of Benghazi?
Oh, yeah.
Dozens. So, and that's the way every event is. And yet our media locks in on the official story, and in many cases, that's all that's allowed today.
That's absolutely true. And I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, living outside the United States and looking in. I lived in South America for 2 years. I was a resident of Ecuador.
Okay.
So I've shared some of that experience. What would you say to listeners today who are listening in the United States about how different the view is from the outside looking in?
I think the best way I can describe it is to give the viewers the results of that Gallup poll that was done a year or so ago, 2 years ago, that was very much hushed up in the United States. Gallup went out, and I think they polled like 3,000 people internationally, no one from the U.S., and one of the questions in the poll was, if you were to go to war, who would it likely be against? Who would be the adversary? 23% of the international community polled out of this named the United States.
Wow.
8% named Pakistan, 6% named China. So the U.S., literally 1 out of 4 people in the world thinks if they go to war, it will be against the United States in some fashion, that we will be behind the war. Now, as a veteran, I hang my head in shame over that.
Well, hold that thought, Jesse. We got to take a break. We'll be right back after this break. You're listening to an interview with Jesse Ventura. American Conspiracies is the book. We'll be right back after this. All right, we're back on TalkNetwork.com with Jesse Ventura, author of American Conspiracies. Thank you again, Jesse, for joining us. So here's a question. What do you think is happening today in America that when we look back 10 years in the future might be considered another American conspiracy that could be in a future book of yours, for example? What's happening right now?
Well, I don't know. You know, that's a very difficult question, because what do you know what to believe right now and what not to believe? You know, a lot of things you're going to get the one story on it and you're going to initially believe it, and then as time goes on, other stories about that particular subject might start surfacing, which would lead you to think that, well, maybe the first story wasn't exactly true, or maybe we were misled on the first story. So it's real difficult to predict what they're doing and what they're not doing and what they're covering up and what they're not covering up. But I always like to go back to the basic concept that I learned in studying Colonel L. Fletcher Prouty. And he of course, was the character that the Donald Sutherland Mr. X character was patterned after in Oliver Stone's great movie JFK. And the real Colonel Prouty, he always said, when you look for a government conspiracy, the first thing you always look for is the violation of standard operating procedures. Because government and military all operate under that umbrella, standard operating procedures. And when something happens, and you see a clear case of standard operating procedures being ignored or being done differently, that, Colonel Prouty said, is your first red flag.
Interesting.
That should go up. And he's correct. Having been in the military, having been in civilian government myself, government runs on standard operating procedures. They always do.
That's right. That's right. Well, and we've seen a lot of variation off of standard operating procedures out there, like the IRS used as a political weapon. We see the EPA now arming up with military gear, sort of creating its own small military to enforce environmental regulations. That has a lot of people concerned. We see, there's a lot of talk, of course, about false flags being planned or carried out, but we know for sure.
There's a simpler thing to look at, and it's right there for you in the defense bill a couple years ago. I tried to bring it to the attention of the local media here in Minnesota, and it never even got on the air. And I went to them personally and says, why aren't you talking about this? This will affect every American citizen in the country. And what it was, Senator McCain and Senator Levin from Michigan co-sponsored an amendment to the defense bill, and you know us, nobody votes against the defense bill. After all, we spend more on defense than the other 25 countries combined. 24 of them are allegedly our allies.
Wow.
Nobody's going to vote against the defense bill, so it passes without even a debate on it. And the amendment on this bill was an amendment that allows the U.S. military to operate freely inside our country to fight and combat the war on terror.
That's right.
And
that can be invoked at any time.
That's now okay. And yet our mainstream media didn't even see fit to talk about this. I went down there personally, and all the reporters say is, well, it'll go upstairs and they'll decide. And it never got on.
Well, it's extraordinary. But, public faith in the mainstream media continues to plummet, and I don't know if you saw some of the Republican debate last night on CNBC. But,
no, I haven't watched any of it because I'm not voting for any of them, so why watch it?
Well, they fought back. I mean, Ted Cruz really laid into the moderators and told them they're all basically Democratic operatives. Right?
And I bet the Democrats will say they're all Republican operatives, won't they?
Well, no, it's all these gotcha questions for the Republicans.
What are they going to call Fox News, fair and balanced?
No, right, exactly.
See, they both got their operatives.
They do.
Ted Cruz calling out the mainstream media, that's laughable. Because his party has as much right-wing, what's Rush Limbaugh? Who are all those people if they're not the right-wing hatchet men?
Sure, it's team right versus team left, it seems like.
That's the point. The point is, and you got to go to the bigger point. Why doesn't Ted Cruz go to the real problem, and that's corporate money in our political system?
Because he's got to have the corporate money.
It buys off the politicians, who in turn, and then they own the media. So therefore, the politicians and the media are essentially on the same team, aren't they?
Well, that brings us back to the Trump factor. Here he is using his own money. He's a big disruptor of the process.
And Bernie.
What's your take on Trump?
Don't forget
and Bernie Sanders. That's right. Yeah,
because
threatening Wall Street.
Bernie's an independent who went into the Democrat. It was a smart move. Because if Bernie'd run as an independent, he'd be hearing nothing.
You're exactly. Good point.
But see, now he can at least be in the debates.
That's right.
So he ran as a Democrat. Same thing with Trump. I love what they're doing. I love that they're fracturing the two parties because I wrote the book, Democrats and Republicans, No More Gangs in Government. And our forefathers warned us when political parties took over the government, it would be the downfall of America. Well, I believe we're there. And I love the fact that Trump and Bernie are disrupting these two parties, causing them to split and fracture, which is good. Maybe then we'll get 4 people up there on a presidential debate instead of 2.
Good point. In fact, I remember a book that you wrote during your time as a governor. I think it was called "Do I Stand Alone" or similar. And in that book, you talked about how you, as an independent, were so viciously attacked by everybody on both sides.
Oh yeah, absolutely. My last year in office, I was the most powerful man in America. You know how?
No.
Because the Democrats and Republicans got in bed together to oppose my budget. Now tell me anybody else who can get them in bed together to oppose you. Does that not make you the most powerful man in the country?
But that's the way they want to run it. You have to join their gang. Otherwise, they hang you out to dry.
They team up on you. Eventually, they will team up on you. Now, for 3 years as governor, that didn't happen. I had a Republican House and a Democratic Senate. And generally, whoever I sided with prevailed. But then the last year was when the war took place. Election was coming up, re-election. They overrode my budget, they overrode my vetoes, and they subsequently, because of their political decisions, they put Minnesota in a $5 billion recession.
Wow.
And I fooled them. I didn't run, so they were stuck with their own thing. Because it was their budget, not mine. And then I chose not to run for re-election, and politically then that shows you they don't care about the people, because they were willing to do that to the people of Minnesota in which to try to beat me politically.
Well, that's exactly it. And we see that at the federal level, in order to protect their power, they will sacrifice any number of Americans.
These two parties do not put the American people first. Here's the list. First is the political party. Second are the corporate money donors. And then third is the politicians' own political ambitions. We, the people, might be fourth. Maybe. Maybe.
Right. Yep. Well said. We've got about 3 minutes left here.
Sure.
Where do you think this election is going, this 2016 election? Any
First of all,
insight?
let me clear the air. I don't even like talking about it. Here's what I'd like to see happen. And I would work for this if I became president. I would like to see a law implemented that you can't even form a campaign committee until the year the election is going to take place. I mean, what's next? The new president gets sworn in January of 2017, and the campaign begins the next day for 2020?
Well, sure. They've got Christmas decorations at Walmart in August now, it seems like, too.
Well, that's my point. That's my point. Other countries do it. In Minnesota, I can tell you, there's nothing that'll irritate the Minnesota people more. We have short summers here. Put on your political ads during the height of summer and see how popular you are. They'll hate your guts, because politics doesn't start here until the state fair Labor Day weekend. Then from there to November, it's politics. We need to implement that across the country. Why are we... Look at what these campaigns are going to cost in wasted money.
Of course. Yeah, and also just the attention of everybody.
Well, you know what it is? What you have here is nothing but entertainment for mainstream media to get entertainment points and make money.
That's right.
That's all this is about. This isn't about picking a new president. This is all about entertainment for mainstream media to make these races as long as they can, because right now it's selling because the lemmings of America are buying in.
That's right. That's right. Well said. Now, a minute left here, Jesse. Final thoughts.
Final thoughts are, I'll keep up the fight, because to me, as I finish every show I do on Off the Grid, I tell people, in order for this country to work, this great experiment, it requires us to be vigilant citizens, and questioning your government is not unpatriotic, it is patriotic. That's what you're supposed to be doing to keep them honest. So my final pitch is, come on, these problems we have, we need only look in the mirror to know why. It's because we're not doing our jobs as citizens out there. And one of our jobs is to hold these bastards' feet to the fire, so people start doing it.
Great to hear. Well, thank you, Jesse Ventura, for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, Mike. We'll do it again. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of the Health Ranger Report. Please support us by visiting our online store at store.naturalnews.com, where you can find the world's cleanest, laboratory-validated superfoods, nutritional supplements, personal care products, shampoo, chemical-free products, just about everything for your home and body and health that you might want, including supplements for your pets as well. Everything is laboratory-validated in our forensic food lab, and we don't sell something unless it tests clean. I think we're the only online reseller to do this really extensive testing of everything that we sell. If we don't like the lab test results, meaning if it's not really, really clean, including with heavy metals, then we don't sell it, period. We have free shipping on orders over $99 and a satisfaction guarantee on everything that we offer. So check us out now at store.naturalnews.com, and thank you for your support.